Yo, what's going on, guys? It's still Dan596 back at it again with another video. So this is that video you guys have been waiting for a little while. It's my reasons and why I think Majora's Mask is the best video game in the entire world. Now, I understand why you may or may not disagree, but this is my opinion. And maybe you might reconsider how you view this game after this video. Well, with that being said, let's get right into the video. My first reason on why I think Majora's Mask is the best video game ever created is it's the most unique Zelda game and could be one of the most unique games of all time, simply because of the 3-day time mechanic. Now, don't get me wrong, I completely understand why people would hate this game because of that. When I was younger, I even hated this game, and I hated the time trials that other video games had before. I just hate that the game had a time limit on it throughout the entire game. It felt rushed, and again, I can understand why people hate this because of that. It makes people with anxiety freak out because they're not going to have enough time to do whatever they need to do. Even if they can turn back time, it still feels like it's not enough. So that's where my counter argument comes in. A lot of people say that there's not enough time in the game when you can turn back time, making almost an infinite time loop. Especially, you have all the time in the world to complete whatever you want, but after the 3 days, you will need to turn it back, which I actually really like as a concept. My second reason is the realism in this game. Well, not only were there, the themes darkened, matured, and more realistic, but the whole time mechanic makes it even more real. If this game was in real life and the moon was going to crash on the earth, or an evil dark lord or entity was going to kill everybody, you would have to save the world as fast as you can. Now, this is one reason why I like Majora's Mask over Ocarina of Time, because in Ocarina of Time, you have all the time in the world to do whatever you want, while in Majora's Mask, it's more like real life, where you have a time limit to save the world. If the world was really endangered, would you spend your time fishing? Do you think the Dark Lord would just sit around in his castle waiting for you to come kill him? No, he would do whatever it takes so that you need to make it quick to defeat him. That is why this game really makes you care about it and the people of the land and everybody of just Termina in general. My third reason on why I think this is the best video game of all time is it had the best storyline so far when it came out. It wasn't a journey where you had just woken up and you were told to do something. Link had purposely left on a quest to try and find Navi, or Saria, which I do want to make a thoughts and theory about that, and got pulled into this new area of adventure and discovery. Along the way, he makes a bunch of new friends and saves the entire land from great evil yet again. But not only because he was told to, but because he feels like he needs to help out his new friends that he has made and to rescue Skull Kid, which he had known previously before this game. The fourth reason and why I like this game is the side quests. A lot of people say, they don't really care for the side quests, but the tedious side quests were so annoying to figure out, but yet so fun. Now, having the internet back when, I was a child and many others were a child, it was so much fun trying to figure everything out as a kid. It was brutal, but so fulfilling. You have the options to complete these side quests or not, but obviously I would because of all the people you meet through the side quests, learning all of their stories and helping them in all of this time of horror. It's really touching because it makes you personally care about the people of Termina. They're not just some random NPCs or random people in this area you gotta save. No, they are real people that you end up caring a lot about. A few cliche examples of this would be the Romani Ranch and the Cafe and Angie's side quests. Another thing that I like about this game, which is the moon that's constantly looking down on you no matter where you are. It's quite frightening, and constantly having somebody watching over every single move you make, it's very pressuring. It's like somebody's watching you, and every little mistake you make, they're watching and they're judging you. It's kind of spooky in that sense, but I actually kind of like it. So the themes of this game, There are many dark themes of this game, and I'm not going to go through everything, but a couple of them I will go through. One of the smaller themes of this game is being yourself no matter who you really are. Be yourself. Don't hide your true personality. Don't try to change who you are just to please others, because in the end, you are yourself. There's the only thing that matters in the end. No one will ever be with you forever besides yourself. So spend your time on Earth being who you really are. Who cares what others think of you? Who cares if you're weird or you're different? Because you are who you are, and that will please yourself. It's a lot easier to please yourself than it is to please others. One famous quote from the game actually says, "Nobody cared who I was until I took the mask off." This entitles mainly to Skull Kid thinking that he will be rejected from his friends and everybody else, but in the end, people actually enjoyed him after he took the mask off and became himself. Link also experiences this well throughout all the transformations. He becomes 3 different species across Termina and realizes how much stress it is to be someone who you really are not, and love and passion that does not go both ways. You know, people loved Maku and Darmani, but Link didn't really feel or give the same love back because he simply wasn't them. He just pretended to be them. He didn't truly love them. He was just, filling in that space that wasn't there. So you may have heard this before or not, but this theme is one of the main themes of the game, and it's the theme of grief and what actually goes on. I'll put a timestamp in the video if you want to skip over this, but I kind of recommend you sit through and watch it. So starting this off with the first stage of grief. The first stage of grief is denial, typically when people have the inability to rationally acknowledge something that has happened or is happening. And you can really see this shine through in Clocktown. So Deku Link, or Deku Link, whatever, he arrives in Termina through the clock tower, which ticks towards a countdown to the Carnival of Time, which is the greatest festival that comes once a year. And it seems as if the town people have noticed the situation with the moon. The mayor seems to already be in denial as he exclaims, "You cowards, do you actually believe the moon will fall?" The confused townsfolk simply caused a panic by believing this ridiculous, groundless theory. The soldiers couldn't prevent the panic, but outside the town walls is where the danger is. You want answers? The answers is the carnival should not be cancelled. Then you see the carpenters seem a little irrational and don't want to flee, although their impending doom is gleaming right over their head. Similarly, the master at the sword training center entertains that idea because when the moon comes too close, he says he'll simply just cut it into pieces with his blade. In both cases, we can see an inability to grasp the reality at hand and the foolishness fantasies arising to take its place. But denial can only be so temporary, because eventually, most of the carnival committee is forced to deal with the problem at hand with the moon. Drawing even closer with each passing hour gradually becomes more and more difficult to ignore. By the night of the 3rd day, all of the carpenters and merchants have evacuated, leaving only Muto and all of his stubbornness behind. The Swordmaster has retreated to a back room where he lies trembling in fear and despair. It does not stop there, however, because during Link's encounter with Skull Kid at the top of the clock tower on the night of the 3rd day, Link realized that he stands there currently with no way of defeating Skull Kid, and in the end he is forced to enact some sort of denial by using the Song of Time to reverse the flow of time, undoing the events leading up to the Great Fall, and giving himself a second chance to set things right. The second stage of grief is anger, when a person can no longer deny the reality of the situation and results to a misdirected feelings of anger. This time Link has arrived at the Deku Palace and has come to find out that the tribe's princess has gone missing. He meets the Deku King, who has been punishing a young monkey whom he believes made off with his daughter and fed her to the monsters in the Woodfall Temple. But the monkey is completely innocent. The king, rather than putting his energy and his men out at work in search of the princess, he instead takes his anger out on this poor innocent monkey. The real villain at work is anger. The evil sown by Skull Kid manifesting in the cursed swamp, the toxic drifts that divide us in the moments of rage, and the fury and the might of the Deku King himself. The third stage of grief is bargaining, which is desperate hopes or efforts to postpone or reverse the suffering and loss. Link's next trip takes him to Snow Peak, home of the Gorons, who are mourning due to the loss of their recent friend/brother, Darmani. Link ends up meeting Darmani's ghost, however, and he ends up asking Link to deliver his last request, bring him back to life so that he doesn't have to let all the people he knows and loves down. Well, Link doesn't really have the powers to do that, but the magical transformation masks do. Darmani's resurrection is a perfect example of bargaining, unable to face his failure or his people to find a closure. The fourth stage of grief is depression. With realization that there is no escaping fate comes the desire to constantly be sad. Link meets Maku dying on the coastline of Great Bay, where he learns about the guitarist's girlfriend, Lulu, and her missing eggs. Although Maku's passing would be enough cause for grief, with Zora's mask, Link is able to become him. The Zora people treat him as if he had never died or never left. This leaves Lulu in isolation, looking out to the Great Bay Temple from outside of Zora's Hall. Her isolation reflects depression, the fourth stage of grief. But what we also find out is that Lulu's seclusion might have something to do with her missing eggs. Only by singing the tune born by her eggs, by re-establishing a connection to what was lost through vocal expression, Lulu now comes out of her depression. The fifth and final stage of grief is acceptance. After passing through to the other stages, all that is left is to examine one's own self and reality to face the future. In Ikana Valley, the land of the dead, is a perfect place to resolve Link's own grief. Other regions have Link encounter many different other characters, each dealing with their own losses. But apart from a young girl and her mummified father, everyone else in Ikana is already dead. This is the only area where Link finds no new transformation masks here. This leaves Link free to reflect on one's element that he's been distracted from this whole time, himself. In order to complete his task, he climbs the Ikana Tower leading into the heavens, which he acquires the ability to create twin images of himself. These images, one for each of his four forms, seem lifeless and devoid of true personality, and this represents the empty shells of the previous four stages of grief. By leaving them behind, he has transcended to enlightenment during the dungeon, and he finds the light arrows. These arrows have the ability to flip the temple or put heavens at his feet, assuring of his ascendance. But just like Link and the rest of the species of Termina, Skull Kid also has experienced grief. We hear this from one of Grandma's stories that Skull Kid, or in the story known as the Imp, was once friends of the four giants, but he ended up losing his friends and he fell into a deep despair in his grief. He tormented the people of the four lands and as a result lost his friends. That same grief gets absorbed by Majora's mask as it feeds off of Skull Kid's emotions. Link surrenders the masks that he's collected on his journey, which provide proof of his battles against grief. Link then earns the Fierce Deity mask, which is described as containing the merits of all the masks. That this mask transforms Link into an adult form, in contrast to Majora's mask's own childlike form. This signifies the maturity that he has gained by overcoming the grief. That maturity gives him such great power, which he can easily use to vanquish the weakness of grief and despair. At the end of the fight, we see that Skull Kid is able to accept the partings of his old friends and find peace in their departure. But we also see that this parting is not the end. As the story closes, we note that he has returned to the Lost Woods together with Link, his new friend. One of the final things that I really like about Majora's Mask that you don't really see in a lot of other games is after you do something, you can actually see the result and the change in your actions. So for example, in the Woodfall Temple, the whole swamp is poisoned, but as soon as you beat Adwala, the boss of the temple there, you can see that once he's gone, Skull Kid's curse gets lifted from the swamp and the water is no longer poisonous. Same thing happens in Snow Peak Mountains. It's snowing and the Gorons are freezing, but after you beat Goat or Got, whatever you want to call him, you know, the snow melts and it becomes springtime. You can see this happen with the four regions of Term. So I can continue to go on about this game, and go on and on and on about many other different reasons and why I like this game, but I don't really want to bore you guys to death, and I also don't really want this video to go on for forever, you know? I highly recommend everybody to go through, play the game to its fullest, do every single side quest, interact with every single NPC, because I personally care about every single NPC in that game. They're not just people that, you know, stand around and have no sense of, you know, emotion or passion. They're just like, in most games, NPCs are just like, oh, I like shorts or something like that. But in Majora's Mask, it's like randomly that Goron that you have the same name as, you end up kicking him out. Like, you steal his reservation and you end up kicking him out, and he has to sleep outside in the cold rain. I feel so shitty about that, man. Don't you ever feel bad about that? Like, it's things like that that really make this game truly my favorite, and my favorite game of all time. Not even just my favorite Zelda game. This is seriously my favorite game of all time. And I hope I've kind of made some of you people look at the game differently, or at least giving you motivation to replay the game and try to look at it through a different perspective. Now, with all of this being said, I'm going to end this video here. So have a wonderful day, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video.